Jessica stepped off the bus onto the quiet, familiar street of her suburban neighborhood near Detroit, her steps echoing in the cool dusk. The day had been long and unyielding, a continuous stream of meetings, deadlines, and half-smiles exchanged with colleagues who, like wisps of smoke, faded into the background of her hectic schedule. Now, as she trudged up the pathway to her modest home, every footfall felt like a reminder of the isolation that had been creeping into her life. The house stood in subdued silence, its windows dimmed by the encroaching twilight. Inside, the living room lay draped in shadows, furnished only by the essentials that marked years of quiet routine. Jessica paused at the threshold, keys trembling in her hand as she inserted them into the lock. The sound of the door closing behind her resonated like a final note in an unfinished symphony, leaving her with a palpable emptiness that seemed to stretch out in every corner of the room. Without the usual hum of companionship, William's familiar laughter, the murmurs of conversation that once filled these walls, she found herself enveloped by a silence that was both oppressive and liberating. In this solitude, the mind began to wander through corridors of memory, recalling moments of joy and the bittersweet recollections of days when the home had pulsed with life and warmth. Yet with every memory, a tinge of sorrow echoed, for the laughter was now a distant murmur, and the warmth was a relic of a past not quite graspable in the present. In the dim glow of the living room lamp, Jessica sank into the worn armchair that had been her sanctuary during countless evenings of quiet introspection. The routine of her life, meticulously arranged, yet profoundly lonesome, pressed down upon her like an unwelcome guest. As she sipped a lukewarm cup of tea, the softness of the ceramic against her palms served as the only connection to a world that still seemed to persist beyond the barren walls of her solitude. Her thoughts drifted to the absence of William, his gentle reminders to cherish the mundane, his subtle smiles that could light up even the darkest of days. Tonight, however, that comfort was replaced by a deep, unyielding loneliness that she could neither ignore nor fully embrace. It was a loneliness that felt intertwined with the very fabric of the house, echoing through the silent corridors and whispered memories of better times. As the evening deepened, the quiet became almost tangible, a companion that was both unwelcome and impossible to dismiss. Jessica wrapped herself in a soft, familiar shawl and wandered through the rooms of her home as if seeking a trace of the life that once animated every surface. The weight of solitude was unyielding, yet it also sparked in her a muted resolve, a determination to confront these shadows of isolation, to rediscover the strength within the silence, and perhaps, one day, to mend the fractures that had slowly widened in the absence of shared laughter. In that long, solitary hour, amid the quiet murmur of a distant clock and the soft patter of her own thoughts, Jessica realized that the night was more than a time of loneliness. It was a prelude to the possibility of change, a silent invitation to reflect, to understand, and to prepare for the challenges and choices that the coming days would undoubtedly bring. Just as Jessica began to sink deeper into her thoughts, the steady chime of the doorbell sliced through the quiet murmur of the evening. The sound startled her out of reverie, echoing in the empty hallways of her home. With a hesitant hand, she rose from her chair, her footsteps soft but determined, and made her way to the front door. Opening it, she was met by the gentle, familiar smile of Daniel, a man whose presence, though unexpected, carried the weight of shared history and unspoken understanding. Daniel, a longtime friend of her husband William, stood there with a calm assurance, dressed in a neatly pressed shirt and a casual jacket that hinted at both practicality and understated style. His eyes, warm and sincere, immediately conveyed a sense of empathy that was both comforting and disarming. "Good evening, Jessica," he greeted with a tone that was neither intrusive nor overly familiar, striking a delicate balance between respect and friendship. Inviting him inside, Jessica led Daniel through the modest corridors of her home. As they moved together, their conversation unfolded naturally, drifting from mundane details to gentle recollections of shared moments from years past. Daniel's calm presence was a balm to her frayed nerves, his attentive listening allowing her to feel seen in a way that had been missing from her recent days. With each careful observation and considerate word, he chipped away at the ice of isolation that had so thoroughly settled in her heart. As Daniel set to work on the cabinet, his skilled hands and methodical approach revealed not only a proficiency in small repairs, but also an implicit understanding of how the little details in life could hold great significance. While his actions were simple, the unspoken care behind them resonated with Jessica. In the interplay of soft lamplight and the quiet hum of his focused efforts, she found herself momentarily liberated from the heaviness of solitude, a fleeting escape into the realm of connection and gentle reassurance. Before long, the repair was complete, and the sound of the cabinet door closing echoed with a sense of resolved imperfection. Yet the evening's conversation had already woven a subtle thread of intimacy between them, a bond that was both respectful and quietly transformative. Standing at the threshold once again as Daniel prepared to leave, Jessica felt a twinge of reluctant farewell. His visit, though brief and prompted by a minor household inconvenience, had stirred in her a deep-seated longing for understanding and connection, one that would continue to reverberate in the silent spaces of her heart long after the door had closed behind him. That night, as she returned to her armchair with the repaired cabinet quietly affirming that even small acts of kindness could mend more than just loose hinges, Jessica realized that sometimes the most unexpected encounters carried the power to shift the tides of a lonely life. Later that evening, the soft glow of a single lamp filled the compact kitchen with a gentle warmth that belied the chill of the autumn night outside. Jessica decided to prepare a simple meal, a modest dinner meant not only to fill the empty stomach, but also to soothe the quiet ache that had become her constant companion. The clatter of utensils and the sizzling sound from the pan formed an unexpected symphony of domesticity, a delicate counterpoint to the solitude of her day. As the aroma of freshly cooked herbs and vegetables mingled with the faint hint of bread warming in the oven, Jessica found herself cautiously peeling away layers of reserve. Sitting at the small kitchen table, she set out the dishes with an almost ritualistic care, each movement deliberate and laden with the unspoken need for comfort. It was in this vulnerable moment that Daniel reappeared, a quiet witness to her solitude. He stepped in with a gentle nod, his presence as understated as the dim light that cast soft shadows along the walls. Daniel took a seat across from her, his eyes reflecting a sincere curiosity and empathy that invited Jessica to speak freely. The conversation began hesitantly, like a tender negotiation between two souls seeking understanding in a maze of unvoiced emotions. Jessica, usually reserved and guarded in the echoing halls of her home, found herself slowly unraveling the thoughts that had long been confined to the corners of her mind. With each carefully chosen word, she painted a picture of the emptiness that had seeped into her life, the overwhelming sensation of being isolated even in a space once filled with laughter and shared memories. Daniel listened intently, his attention unwavering. His responses were thoughtful, characterized by an unspoken acknowledgement of her inner struggle. He asked questions that were neither intrusive nor overly probing, but which gently coaxed Jessica into revealing the burdens that weighed on her heart. In the quiet hum of their exchange, the kitchen transformed from a mere functional space into a sanctuary where confessions and introspection were gently illuminated by the soft lamplight. The conversation meandered through themes of longing and regret, touching on moments of unfulfilled promise and the slow erosion of everyday joy. Jessica recounted her inner battles, her yearning for something more, a life richer in connection and meaning, and the unrelenting pressure of expectations that had left her feeling adrift. Daniel's calm and measured responses offered a subtle reassurance. His understanding was palpable, not because he had all the answers, but because his genuine concern bridged the gap between solitude and connection. In that humble kitchen, over a dinner that was as unpretentious as it was heartfelt, a quiet communion took shape. The simplicity of the meal mirrored the straightforward truth of their exchange, where each bite carried the taste of shared understanding and the hope that even in the midst of loneliness, one might find solace in the honest company of another. The next day dawned cool and clear, the kind of day that hinted at the promise of renewal. Jessica had set out with a sense of quiet purpose, her steps leading her to the local library in Ann Arbor, a modest building with walls lined by stories of countless lives. She carried with her a book that had been a silent companion through many reflective evenings, now due for its return. The crisp autumn air and the rustle of fallen leaves on the sidewalk framed her journey with the gentle rhythm of a turning season. As she neared the library, her path unexpectedly veered toward a small city park nearby, a serene oasis in the midst of everyday bustle. It was here, beneath a canopy of golden and red leaves, that fate gently reintroduced her to Daniel. He was seated on a weathered wooden bench, engrossed in a dog-eared novel that mirrored his quiet demeanor. The sight of him in this unexpected setting stirred something deep within Jessica, a stirring of old memories intermingled with the subtle anticipation of a new encounter. Their eyes met across the open space, and for a moment the clamor of the city faded into a hushed background murmur. Daniel closed his book with deliberate care and rose to greet her with a soft smile that bridged the distance of unspoken years. The reunion carried an effortless familiarity, as if the park itself had been waiting for this moment to weave their paths together once more. They exchanged greetings that were both warm and tentative, each word layered with the quiet gravity of shared pasts and present uncertainties. Strolling along the tree-lined pathway, they fell into a conversation that meandered through everyday musings, the fleeting beauty of nature in autumn, the unexpected turns of life, and the quiet weight of personal reflections. The park, with its serene benches and scattered sunlight, bore silent witness to their unfolding dialogue. Jessica found herself drawn into a narrative that transcended the ordinary. Daniel's insights resonated with an earnest clarity, echoing the very sentiments she had long held within her. Their words, measured and sincere, painted a delicate balance between reminiscence and cautious hope. As the afternoon waned, a gentle breeze swept through the park, stirring the fallen leaves and carrying with it a sense of imminent change. In a spontaneous moment of closeness, their conversation paused as their eyes locked, communicating a silent understanding. Without preamble, a tender, brief kiss passed between them, a moment both fragile and defining. It was an encounter that, though unspoken, rewrote the boundaries of what each had known about their hearts. In that fleeting instance, amid the quiet murmur of nature and the soft glow of the waning sun, Jessica felt a surge of emotion that was at once both bewildering and profoundly liberating. Standing there on the park path, the kiss lingered like a whispered promise of change, a turning point that challenged the stability of all that had come before. The world around them continued to transform with the season, and so too did the subtle landscapes of their inner lives. In that unexpected meeting, under the watchful gaze of autumn's colors, Jessica realized that life, in its unpredictable unfolding, held the power to alter destinies in the most unanticipated of moments. In the silent aftermath of that unexpected kiss, Jessica found herself adrift in a storm of thoughts. The park's golden light had long since faded into twilight, yet the vivid imprint of that tender moment lingered like a refrain echoing in the depths of her mind. As she walked alone along the now empty pathway, each step carried the weight of an emerging truth, one that she could no longer bury beneath layers of routine and denial. Every memory of that shared moment with Daniel unfurled before her eyes, mingling with the recollection of years spent side by side with William. The kiss, though brief, had stirred a tempest of emotions that challenged the life she had known. It was as if the boundaries between right and wrong, loyalty and desire, had blurred in a single, irrevocable act. Jessica's heart pounded with the intensity of a realization that her choices, however small they seemed at the time, now bore consequences that reached far beyond her own aching solitude. With the chill of the evening seeping into her bones, she paused by a quiet, secluded pond on the edge of the park. The water, still and reflective under the pale moonlight, became a mirror to her inner turmoil. In its depth, she saw not only the reflection of a woman caught in the throes of unforeseen passion, but also the faces of two lives intertwined by fate: William's steadfast trust and Daniel's gentle kindness. The realization was stark and undeniable. Every step she took towards something new meant leaving behind a part of the past, and that past was filled with promises made and commitments held. Torn between a desire for solace and a yearning for redemption, Jessica wrestled with the truth that her actions had set in motion ripples of hurt that would not easily be mended. The fleeting kiss was a spark that had ignited a series of internal reckonings, a confrontation with the very core of her identity. Was this moment a cry for change or a misguided grasp at an elusive sense of fulfillment? The reflections in the water offered no clear answer, only the silent testimony of a soul grappling with the magnitude of its own choices. In that solitary vigil by the pond, Jessica's mind replayed every conversation, every silent glance exchanged with Daniel, and every subtle reminder of William's unwavering presence at home. Each thought was a reminder of the fragile balance she had once taken for granted, a balance now shattered by the unforeseen intersection of paths. The stark realization that her pursuit of fleeting comfort was slowly undermining the trust and love that had anchored her life left her feeling exposed and vulnerable. Haunted by the echoes of her inner conflict, Jessica resolved to confront the inevitable repercussions of her actions. The night, once filled with a semblance of tranquility, now throbbed with the urgency of decisions that could no longer be postponed. With each labored breath, she acknowledged the painful truth: the pursuit of her own solace had inflicted an indelible wound on the fabric of her life, a wound that would demand healing, however daunting the journey might be. Under a leaden sky that hinted at both melancholy and renewal, Jessica found herself drawn into the pulsating heart of downtown Detroit, where an avant-garde art gallery beckoned with promises of introspection and unspoken revelations. The building, a repurposed industrial structure now transformed into a vibrant arena of creative expression, loomed before her like a sanctuary of untold stories. Inside, the space was awash in natural light filtered through expansive windows, mingling with carefully curated artificial brilliance to create a realm that existed between dream and reality. As she stepped onto the polished floor, Jessica felt the weight of her recent experiences settle into a quiet urgency. The gallery's layout was a deliberate maze of emotions, each installation seemingly poised to confront its viewer with the raw, unvarnished truth of human existence. Contemporary sculptures twisted into abstract forms, and large canvases splashed with colors that defied simple description captivated her attention. In the midst of these creations, she sensed an uncanny reflection of her own inner chaos, a blend of despair and hope that had been slowly simmering beneath the surface of her daily life. Wandering through the exhibition, Jessica allowed herself to be enveloped by the evocative power of the artworks. One installation, a cascade of hanging fabrics that moved in a simulated breeze, reminded her of the ever-changing nature of life, its unpredictability, and the inevitability of transformation. Another piece, a series of monochrome portraits displayed in stark contrast against vibrant geometric shapes, seemed to echo the duality of her existence, the life she had known and the potential for renewal that lay hidden within the chaos. In the quiet solitude of the gallery, each step she took was accompanied by a mounting awareness of the choices that had led her to this precipice. The art around her was not just an arrangement of color and form, it was a mirror reflecting the complexity of the human heart. As she paused before a large abstract painting, its swirling hues evoking both turbulence and calm, she felt the stirrings of clarity. Here, in the unspoken language of art, was a call to honesty, a demand to confront the dissonance between who she was and who she longed to be. The atmosphere of the exhibition carried with it an undeniable sense of reckoning, The creative energy pulsating through the gallery ignited a long-dormant determination within Jessica. It was as if each piece of art had peeled away another layer of her self-deception, leaving her vulnerable yet unburdened by the truth. With every deliberate step, she recognized the need to rebuild the fractured bonds of her life, to honor the commitment that had once been the cornerstone of her existence. In that transformative space, Jessica resolved that the time for evasions had passed. The art had spoken in ways that words could scarcely capture, and in its silent insistence, she found the courage to face her past missteps. The realization was profound and inescapable. By choosing the path of truth, she could begin to mend the delicate fabric of trust that had been worn thin by her hidden regrets. The gallery, with all its poignant beauty and relentless clarity, had become the stage for her moment of truth, a quiet yet resolute affirmation that the journey towards healing and renewal began with an honest reckoning of oneself. Later that day, as the sky softened into a quiet dusk, Jessica found herself drawn to the gentle murmur of a nearby river. The water flowed languidly, mirroring the introspective rhythm of her heart, while the fading light danced on the ripples like memories that could neither be reclaimed nor ignored. At a small, secluded riverside cafe, she arranged to meet Daniel one last time. The setting, unadorned yet profoundly calming, was a fitting backdrop for what would be a conversation heavy with honesty and regret. Sitting at a small table by the water's edge, Jessica's eyes wandered over the quiet scene, a distant couple sharing whispered words, the subtle rustling of leaves, and the steady, calming flow of the river. Daniel arrived with his characteristic gentle manner, his presence as unassuming as the soft breeze that carried the faint scent of autumn. The two exchanged courteous greetings, each aware that the forthcoming words held the weight of irrevocable decisions. There was a palpable sense of inevitability in the air, as if the river itself had prepared them for the moment of truth. Taking a steadying breath, Jessica began to speak. Her voice, though trembling at first, soon found a rhythm that resonated with clarity and compassion. "Daniel," she said softly, "I have been searching for the courage to face what is in my heart. Over the past days, amidst the fleeting moments of solace and connection, I have come to understand that the path I embarked on, though tempting in its promise of warmth, was not meant to lead me away from the commitments that define who I truly am." Her words were measured and sincere, each syllable echoing the pain of a secret kept too long. Daniel listened quietly, his expression calm and understanding. Jessica continued, revealing the inner struggle that had brought her to this point. "I have come to realize that my heart is still bound to William, a bond formed through years of shared dreams and quiet sacrifices. My soul aches with remorse every time I think of the promises made, the trust given, and the life that we built together. I cannot, in good conscience, continue on a path that fractures that trust." The river flowed steadily by as if bearing silent witness to the confession, its movement a reminder that every ending makes space for a new beginning. In that poignant exchange, Jessica's confession was not a rejection of the solace that Daniel had offered, but a necessary act of self-honesty. She spoke of her desire to mend the fractures that had deepened over time, of her commitment to face the consequences of her choices, and of the hope that through truth, healing might begin. Daniel's eyes held neither judgment nor sorrow, only a quiet respect for the resolve she demonstrated. Their conversation, though heavy with unspoken grief, was also a tribute to the beauty of truth. As the evening deepened and the first stars began to emerge overhead, both understood that this parting was not an end to compassion or understanding, but rather a pivotal step in restoring the bonds that had been strained by secrets. In that serene moment on the riverbank, beneath the gentle glow of twilight, Jessica found a bittersweet clarity, an affirmation that the journey to redemption often begins with the courage to speak one's truth. After that transformative confession on the riverbank, Jessica returned home with a profound resolve. The familiar walls of her house now carried a different weight, a mix of regret, hope, and the determination to rebuild what had been so carefully woven over years. As she stepped into the living room, the soft hum of the refrigerator and the muted ticking of the clock served as quiet reminders of a life that, though marred by mistakes, still held promise for renewal. That evening, with the remnants of dusk lingering at the window, Jessica found William in the study, his eyes focused on a stack of papers that told silent stories of their shared dreams. The room, filled with the subdued aroma of old books and fresh coffee, became the arena for the first honest conversation in what felt like an eternity. Jessica's voice, tentative yet resolute, broke the silence. "William, I need to talk to you," she began, each word measured and heavy with sincerity. Her confession was not dramatic but deeply reflective, a raw admission of the choices she had made and the pain they had caused.